What if I told you that the most iconic line, maybe in all of pop culture and television, almost never happened? Today we're going to talk to Chuck Palahniuk, who is one of my heroes and the author and creator of Fight Club. Only one rule of Fight Club. That almost never happened. And as you'll hear in this episode, it almost didn't happen because Chuck was told by lots of people his writing wasn't appropriate, wasn't good, and it wasn't until he found a writing group that helped him. On this episode, we'll dive into what it's like to build that community of around yourself, how to take smarter risks, and most importantly, how not to give up on the process of getting feedback, of creating, because you never know when you may have the next Fight Club on your hands. Enjoy.
Now that we have the internet, and you can just go to Wikipedia,
Yep.
that buys you no authority. It says, oh, you went to Wikipedia. Who cares? You can find out something on a really superficial, seemingly deep level instantly.
Yeah.
So right now I'm finding the things that really have authority, where you really get authority, is a different kind of emotional authority, where you're able to kind of state something, an emotional truth that people are aware of, but nobody has ever stated it overtly. Nobody's ever found a way of putting it forward. And so that when you do so, you are providing this enormous relief for all of these readers.
Interesting.
They're saying, oh, you read my mind.
Oh, yeah.
I started out wanting to be kind of a fake Stephen King. A lot of successful fiction at the time, and then trying to replicate it, and doing so really badly. And doing so in isolation, and then realizing that I was going to waste my youth in this kind of, pointless isolation. Joining writing workshops gave me the socialization I wanted, and it gave me some guidance for the first time. Because I didn't study writing in college. I studied journalism and no creative writing whatsoever. So at least once a week, I got a party. I got workshop, and workshop was ultimately a party.
Yeah.
And I got feedback on my work. And every workshop, there was a senior writer, someone who was published, who could give me some good advice and eventually hook me up with an agent. But it felt like it was taking years and years. But in retrospect, I started writing when I was 28, and I wrote Fight Club when I was 33, 34. The story was just something I wrote in a single afternoon at work. I wanted to write a short story that used a nonfiction device that would allow me to jump around temporally, that I could create a scene in one paragraph, and then I could use this device to jump to a different scene that might have been speculative, or might have been kind of expository, or it might have been in the past or the future. But I wanted a device that would allow me to jump around and signal to the reader that I was jumping around. And for a short story, I thought, I'll just create 7 or 8 rules, just 7 or 8 rules. And then every time I cut back to the rules, it will signal the reader that I'm cutting to something else. Because in a lot of ways, when I write, especially short fiction or really, really physical, punchy scenes, I model it after writing lyrics. And lyrics have all these different devices for signaling. I wanted to be able to cut fiction the way that people cut film. And so I wrote 7, 8 rules. I just arbitrarily made it about a place where you could consensually fight. It made such a tight little short story. And I think people were more in love with the structure of the story than, and I think after the fact, they kind of embraced the violence of the story.
Right.
But I don't think they recognized it, but I think that they really liked the fact that the story read like a song, like they were hearing a song or a ballad. And that was the initial stickiness of it. And I had a whole sort of speculative collection of short stories because I was writing at the time. I wanted to write a fantastic collection of short stories. And then I started to notice that they all kind of centered around the same themes. And it would take very little to kind of cobble these collections together and then to look for kind of where I would have to write bridging chapters to connect them. And that's ultimately what became Fight Club. I've been asking people when they, especially when they see a movie, because most people are aware of their movies more than their books.
Right.
Do you remember the entire movie linearly from beginning to end? What do you remember about the movie? And everyone says, no, I have favorite scenes. Right. And when I go back to the movie, I will fast forward through all the parts I hate. Mm-hmm. And so I'm trying to get away from writing as linearly as I have been lately.
Interesting.
I always thought the point of writing was to write full time so that you could write a very linear, fast-paced thing. Mm-hmm. But now I'm finding that the things that I really love are books like The Joy Luck Club. Mm-hmm. When you're working full time and trying to write, you need some sense of satisfaction and completion on a regular basis. And if you can write a short story that also functions as a chapter, mm-hmm. you don't have to carry that algebraic equation in your head all the time, which is so exhausting. Mm-hmm. And it used to be that you could sell those to magazines. And when eventually you brought the manuscript to a publisher, you could say, and 6 chapters have been published in big magazines. Mm-hmm. The little chunks allow you to experiment stylistically.
Interesting.
You don't have to sustain a stylistic voice experiment that might not work. Mm-hmm. You can make it work in 6 or 8 pages, mm-hmm. and then you'll know whether it's going to work over 300 pages.
Right.
It used to be that you could establish authority by knowing something really unique and interesting and knowing it really deeply and being able to articulate it and teach it to someone. Mm-hmm. And that would buy you a ton of authority.
Right.
And now that we have the internet, and you can just go to Wikipedia,
yep,
you can find out something on a really superficial, seemingly deep level instantly. Nobody has ever stated it overtly. Nobody's ever found a way of putting it forward. And so that when you do so, you are providing this enormous relief for all of these readers.
Interesting.
They're saying, oh, you read my mind.
Oh, yes.
I've always thought that. And that's the new Wikipedia. It's like this emotional Wikipedia. And that comes from having to be with people and listen to them at parties or bars or workshops where people tell their secrets.
Right.
And where people kind of recognize themselves in each other's secrets. A lot of times when I do anything with radio or podcasts where there's a technician behind a glass window and they're cutaway soundproof, I know it's working when through the corner of my eye, I see the technician laughing his head off behind the glass. I think, okay, I'm really hitting it. I tend to avoid meeting writers whose work I really like is because they are never going to be their characters.
Interesting.
The publisher is going to insist that the title is wrong.
Yeah.
And it needs to have a catchier, cuter title. And it needs to have all of this sort of crap done to it that you really hate. And so that by the time it comes back to you as a book, you already hate it a little bit.
Right.
David Sedaris told me, when you go on tour, never read from the current thing. Always read from the next thing.
Interesting.
Again, it's your chance to road test this, to see if the next idea keeps people spellbound, if they engage with it, if they laugh at it, if they're shocked by it. And it beats the hell out of reading this thing that you've already kind of grown to hate. When I started writing, I really loved oral storytelling.
Right.
But the only place where that still existed in the culture was in stand-up comedy.
Right.
If you write something with the intention of fixing the world, that the idea is not so much to fix the world as it is to kind of model a new possibility. And if it's something that appeals to you, and you find that it appeals to a lot of other people, then it can more effectively become a solution than if it's just presented as a solution. So it's about finding joy instead of repairing something. I'm always fascinated by the commodification of human intimate experience. And that's why, I fell in love with writing about sex toys, because I couldn't believe just how much of our intimate lives were becoming automated and consumer products. Porn has kind of replaced intimacy.
There was an article that came out about the fastest growing social network this year is called OnlyFans, if you've probably seen it. And Cardi B makes $8 million of people searching for loneliness and like finding ways to be intimate with people, and especially in today's world. So I think to your point about it, like lots of head nods when you talk about that future.
What does she do for $8 million a month? My Comic-Con fans, my comics friends, the people I worked with, the artists, the writers, they say that without Comic-Cons this year, that kind of level of Comic-Con celebrities are now selling access through the internet.
Right.
So if you pay $25, you can have coffee with this B-movie actor. Or if you pay $300, you can talk for 10 minutes with this B-movie actress who's been in all these slasher films. So this kind of internet access for a kind of date is the new way of commodifying your celebrity.
And that's what OnlyFans intimacy and the COVID era has evolved so dramatically.
Yeah. The COVID seems like the ultimate manifestation of this lack of intimacy.